All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessie Bly. I work for Emerging Destinations. We represent cool companies and cool places. Please take a second to jot down my information. It's Jessie at emergingdestinations.com. If there's anything that I can help with in the future, if you need any digital information or would like to deep dive into any of our cool companies and cool places, I am happy to help. Today we have Andy Biggs from Andy Biggs Photo Safaris for this webinar. And before I hand everything over to him, I just wanted to touch on the Emerging Destinations portfolio. We have a big portfolio of companies in South America. We have Terra Nova Tours in Costa Rica. We represent the Guyana Tourism Authority. We've got Hotel Los Torres and Fantastico Sur in Torres del Paine National Park. We also have Cruz Andino, which is the famous lake crossing in Patagonia, Jungle Experiences on the Peruvian Amazon, and then we also have Grand Hotels Lux in Argentina and Uruguay. In Africa, we have the pleasure of representing Kelly and Peacock Safaris, the Elawana Collection, and Sky Safari. All of those are in Kenya and Tanzania. Eco Training is in South Africa, and then Adventure Consults is in Uganda and Rwanda. Lastly, our portfolio of polar product is Adventure Canada and Iceland Pro Cruises and Iceland Pro Travel. So we're really happy to have all these really cool companies in our portfolio, but we just wanted to do something a little bit different today with Andy. So what Andy is going to be doing is taking you through what you need to know and how to sell photo safaris. So hopefully once all this craziness is over, your clients are going to be begging for these awesome trips. So what Andy is here to do is to help us understand what those clients need, their wants, and how to be professional and sell these photographic safaris. So I'm going to hand everything over to Andy. I'd really like to thank him for joining us today. I know he's got a lot on his plate as well, but we really are looking forward to switching up our content a little bit and having Andy with us today.
Thank you, Jessie. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to go over, like what she's mentioned, how to sell safaris for photographers. What do photographers need to know in order to say yes to a safari, and what do you need to know that can be upstream of their asking questions? So let's go over that today. If you need to contact me, you can always send me an email at hello@andybiggs.com. Any follow-up, whatever. I'm an open book when it comes to this. I have been running photographic safari since 2002, primarily in the tour business, setting up prepackaged photo tours that I would guide and take people on photographic journeys. That market has switched for me, and now I'm more on the FIT side, and I do more custom planning, but most of my custom planning tends to be for photographers. So even though my business has switched, it has switched from group to FIT. So let's get into safari planning for photographers. This is going to take probably maybe 20 or 25 minutes of your time, not too long, but this is my office. And this is my office and where I wish I was right now, not behind a computer. As I said, I've been guiding photographic safaris since 2002. On average, I probably guide 1,000+ bed nights per year, which means my family doesn't know who I am sometimes, but it's like I have two different loves. My love of the African bush and teaching photography, and love of family. So it's kind of it's like I have to thread the needle sometimes. So what do photographers want? One of the things that you need to know ahead of time are about the vehicles. Photographers would like private sole use vehicles often, and they also want to know what they look like. So on the selling side, it would be really good, it'd be smart for you to know what the vehicles look like at each of the different camps. You can get photographs of these vehicles through Emerging Destinations. You can get them through Wetu, just for a bunch of different ways of finding out. But the places that you commonly represent, you should know what they look like, how many people it accommodates, and what their standard is in the vehicle. Some camps have a standard of maximum of 4 people. Some have a maximum of 6. Some go up to 8 or 9, which is a bit too crazy for photographers' needs. When photographers think of themselves as photographers, it doesn't mean they've got big lenses and they're semi-professionals or professionals. It just means they're interested in photography. They could be shooting with an iPhone. It really doesn't matter. But what does matter is the more people that are in the vehicle that are not a part of their group, the more those needs start diverging. You might know of situations where you send a client on safari and they are huge into birds, and guess what? Everyone else in the vehicle is not. That can be a problem. So understand what the vehicles look like. This is my vehicle in the Mara, and mine's an open vehicle. But open vehicles can sometimes be challenging. When I say open, it means open sides, no glass. You can't stand up. Some people love to stand up. Some people do not. Some people like to sit down, but there's no way to support their big cameras and lenses or small cameras and lenses. They might want to bring a monopod or something. This is a photograph of a vehicle that has removable tops, and you've got pop tops. So there's so many different types. Acquaint yourself with the different styles of vehicles. Right now, Elawana is going through a change in their vehicles, so you should ask them about what they look like. They now have folding forward windshields, which is a great thing for photographers, okay? And as I mentioned before, sole use of vehicle. Photographers will pay more often for sole use of vehicle, but may want to ratchet back the luxury camps on the other side of that. And that's fine. It's you as a safari planner, you're balancing out what they're going to get with a given budget. And most photographers will pay more for a private vehicle, but there are some camps and companies out in the safari world that do include this, but it's not very common. So let's talk about camera stabilization options. In Southern Africa, we often see these type of items for support. They're made from Barker Performance out of Johannesburg, and it's just basically a padded circle, and they work great. We see them in Botswana, we see them in South Africa, parts of Zambia and Zimbabwe as well. And photographers can just rest their cameras and lenses on it. It's really straightforward, it's easy, but some camps have them, some do not. And this is something you should know about. These are some brackets that I have permanently set in Botswana at a friend of mine's house. So every time I fly in, I use these brackets, and I ship them to the camps that I'm taking people to, and they can either put bean bags on them, or I provide bean bags for them, and we strap them in, or we put a gimbal on them, which looks like I've got a photo in a few slides. Here's a platform on the side of a vehicle. There's a traditional beanbag with a pop-top roof. And you'll find in places like Tanzania and the Serengeti, we often use more pop-top vehicles because we need to drive and do transfers between camps. But sometimes you might arrive at a camp and we use an open vehicle once you arrive in camp. So that we have differing situations even within companies, okay? These are my brackets with gimbal mounts. These are a little hardcore, I know. They weigh a lot. Looks like a bazooka, huh? So understanding what these vehicles are like, that's really a big question mark for a lot of photographers. But you should also know when to go. You know, we know simple things as agents, like when the rainy seasons are, or when the dry seasons are. Well, that's kind of easy, but there are a lot of things that go along with that. This is a camp in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe, and the drier the season, the more the wildlife are attracted to the water holes. So that's good for photographers, right? That's really good. But we should also pay attention to migratory patterns, maybe the calving seasons, the mating seasons when the rut happens, and those are often related to rainy or dry seasons. For example, in the Serengeti, we've got the migration, but where's the migration in March versus July? Photographers are going to want to know that. They're really going to want to know that. For my own safaris, when I arrange trips, I love edges of seasons. As a photographer, I like the beginning of the rainy season or the very end as we transition into the dry times, because there are certain benefits that we get. For example, I love tall grass as a photographer in some places, not. The places where I like tall grass, like the Serengeti, it adds a sense of mystery. There's nothing, it's not like you see everything. And photographically, mystery is a good thing. Here we have the northern Serengeti during, I think that was October. It was really dry, really short grass. So knowing when to go. This is a photograph in the Serengeti in May, really tall grass. And it can be a little challenging at times, but this is one of my favorite times. It's also when fewer people are there. And my customers, photographers, they want to be on safari with as few number of vehicles as possible. And that makes them feel like they're extra special. We want our guests to feel special, but also it's when the rates are lower. So who doesn't like that? I know I do. Carmine bee eaters in Southern Africa know when they arrive. So it's not just migratory patterns of mammals, but also of birds. Our migrants typically are arriving by the beginning of the summertime. So September, October, November, and they're arriving in time that they will have more insects to eat and provide for their young. But also, on the opposite side of that, this happens to be South Luangwa, at that really dry time of the year when you get these carmines come through. It's also a time of the year, and it's usually September, by the way, but also this is the time of the year when people in communities outside of the national park might be burning their fields. So you also have a haze in the sky. Is that good or bad? It depends. As a photographer, I don't mind it at all. It's actually really good. It mutes that really bright sky. Also, when you're sending photographers onto a primate safari, like chimpanzees or mountain gorillas, if you send them during a time when it's dry, like June, July, August, you have a lot of dappled light coming from the canopy, which is really, really difficult for photographers. So I tend to send my photographers on the edges of those seasons when there are more clouds, but not necessarily rain. For example, May or September. It's on the edges of those seasons where we can have that dappled light muted by like a more soft light that comes through the canopy, and it's easier to photograph. And remember that these primates have dark, very shiny skin. So that is really difficult to photograph, very difficult to photograph. So what about cultural photo opportunities? You know, most of my customers, if it's their first safari, they come through and they say, oh, I really want a chase, or I really want a majestic lion, or I want a cheetah on top of an anthill, or termite mound. What they're often going home with and they enjoy more are the cultural interactions that they have. When I mean cultural, I just mean anybody they come in contact with on safari. Well, those are all photographic opportunities, whether it's some of the camp staff. Here I've got a photograph up in northern Kenya of a Samburu. Well, he was our waiter, and we just hung out with him and said, hey, would you mind modeling for some photographs? You know about those kind of places where you might have better interaction than others. For example, Maasai villages. This was one of our waiters at another camp in the Masai Mara. This was taken, gosh, almost 20 years ago in Tanzania along the eastern shore of Lake Manyara, just having some fun taking portraits. Or northern Namibia. Or how about just Tanzania again? Staff opportunities. This happens to be a Manyata at a really remote area of Loliondo outside of the Serengeti, and came across this gentleman who had been drinking way too much banana beer. And hey, let's get in there. Let's take some photographs. This is, I think, your more stereotypical cultural photograph from East Africa. But just understand where to send people. But also conservation. You know, conservation is such a huge topic these days. And be a part of it, be active, and understand how to provide these conservation initiatives that are also photographically interesting and compelling. For example, this is up in Sera Conservancy, northern Kenya, where this is Loijipu, the rhino, who was born blind, who now sees, but they are releasing him into the wild. And it's this wonderful story, and just understand where you can do these things. Of course, everybody knows of the Sheldrick Wildlife Trust and interaction there. Photographically very rich. This is Ithumba Hill up in Savo with the Sheldrick organization. More conservation, and of course, midday swims. I'm sure some of you on this webinar have done some of these activities already. It's amazing. But this is kind of the meat, and this is where we'll spend the rest of our discussion today. Which camps offer specific activities? This is where you really, really, really need to know your stuff. For example, Tortoise Camp, where I spend probably a calendar month every year. This is a huge hotspot for photographers, and it's a hotspot because of a lot of things all converging at the same time. Tortoise Camp is a member of the Kiturua Conservancy, which allows you to stay outside of Amboseli National Park, drive off-road, and if your guide is comfortable with you, exiting the vehicle as elephants walk by. Photographers love this. They eat it up, and they love it. It's safe. And the way that we do this is that we wait for these processions of elephants to come out from the woodlands at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro and make their way into the swamps that are inside of Amboseli National Park. And they're often walking in a straight line, and we drive in front of them way far away, and we wait for them to walk by, and we just hang out on the other side of the vehicle, and we take photographs as they walk by. It's very safe, they're used to it, and it's thrilling to people. But photographically, it's very compelling. You can often get photographs like this, where you're sitting on the ground. You don't have to lie on your belly. Some people don't feel comfortable with that or can't get up easily. So you just squat down, take photographs, get back in the vehicle, and do it again. Here we've got that same procession in front of Mount Kilimanjaro. It's such a magical destination. It is such a magical destination for all elephant photography, not only herds, but also big bulls and interaction. This is where the best happens. We have over, I think the latest count is we have over 1,700 unique elephants in the Amboseli ecosystem, which is a dedication to organizations like Big Life to make sure that that stays that way. Also, helicopter activities. Which camps can I hire a helicopter from, and where can I go, and what can I see from the helicopter? Or how about boating activities? Well, boating requires water, and water only occurs at certain camps at certain times of the year in the Okavango Delta, so you should know when those times are. This one happens to be, I think I took this photograph in September, near the end of the high water season, and this one camp we had great bulls walking through. Just amazing, just a wonderful experience. Getting photographers outside of the vehicle and into a boat, into a kayak, onto the ground is probably the best way to put a big smile on their face, because they don't expect it, and it doesn't cost anything more, and it's just a lot more fun. Helicopters definitely cost a lot more. This is an experience in Botswana where we have access to walk with wild elephants, and they're not chained up, but they hang around, and you can hang out with them, and it's absolutely wonderful. It really is neat. Unfortunately, now we're down to 2 elephants. One of them passed away 2 years ago. There are certain camps that do better with certain species of animals. For example, in Southern Africa, like in the Sabi Sand, leopards and lions. The density is so high, and it's such a wonderful experience. You should know where to go. The good thing about that region is you can go at any time of the year, and it's good all months of the year. We're back to Okavango again. So some of these camps have high water, which is sometimes a challenge for mammals, because mammals can't get to the camp or that area very easily without swimming. And most animals don't want to swim. Most mammals are not interested in that. So understand that which camps, so like there's some camps where they're high water and the delta is in May or June, and some are as late as July or August before it starts receding. Tanzania, we're back to Tanzania again. Hot air ballooning. Where can you do it? Where can you easily access hot air balloons? How much does it cost? And one thing that I love to tell people is, like when they're in the high season, like if it's more busy, it's actually photographically better from a hot air balloon, because you have a likelihood of more than one balloon flying. And if you have more than one balloon flying, you've got another subject to photograph if you want, versus just pointing the lens towards the ground. This is a scenic air flight off of the coast of Namibia, flying a slightly different path to a remote camp in northern Namibia. And it just required a little bit more fuel and a little bit more time, and of course a little bit more money, but that's okay, because when I split the costs out, it didn't really make that much of a difference to people. But it's knowing how to set these up and where to do these activities. Well, what about camps and specific species? Wild dogs. You know, I know a ton of people who love to photograph wild dogs, but you know, some camps don't really ever have them. A lot of camps don't ever have them, but some have a pack or two denning in their area every single year. And if you want, please email me. I've got a ton of recommendations for you, but these are amazing to watch. Laikipia Plateau is also a wonderful spot. Cheetah. A lot of my customers love cheetahs, but you know, you don't find them everywhere. So where do they exist and know when to go? I prefer going to the Mara during the low seasons when you can get better cheetah photographic opportunities, because no one's there, and it's great. Right now, I wish I was in the middle of the Mara right now with nobody around, just taking photographs of cheetah. It'd be amazing. And that's really what it's all about. Here are some photographic opportunities back to Botswana. You'll probably notice that I bias a lot of my own trips to Botswana, Kenya, and Tanzania. Those tend to be my staples for photographers, but getting into a boat and photographing elephants as they cross the channel, it's pretty neat, or animals coming down to drink. And the last slide, and we're going to wrap this up, you need to understand the weight allowances for different countries and service providers for the bush plane. On average, it's kind of easy to say that East Africa operates off of a 15 kilo weight limit, and Southern Africa operates off of a 20 kg weight limit. But that's usually not enough for photographers. So know in advance how much it costs to either buy a freight seat or buy another empty seat that you don't use, because they will want this proactively costed into their safaris if they have an ample or even an average amount of camera gear. They're not going to be happy with showing up at a counter, checking in, and they've got 30, 35 kgs worth of stuff, and they say, you know, either this is how much it costs per extra kg, or even worse, they leave your bag back on the tarmac saying, we'll bring it on another flight. That's the worst, all right? And that makes you look bad. So we don't want to do that. Go ahead and cost it in advance, and everybody will be super, super, super happy. And one little last note, photographers are often a little nervous about putting their camera gear into the hold into these bush planes, but reassure them that it's perfectly fine. The only time that it would not be fine would be when you arrive at some place like Nairobi Wilson Airstrip, that some of the ground handler staff will grab those camera bags and put them into their cart first and then put the luggage on top of that. That's a risk point, so I would say don't do that. So have somebody mindful of that when they get off the airplane, they need to quickly grab their bags. So that's it. If you have any questions, please email me. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years. I love it so much. I really do. I consider this industry to be non-competitive with each other. We're all in it together. Not to overuse a term, but seriously, email me. I'm happy to help. And thank you all so much. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Just stay on this slide a second. If you guys have any questions, please type those through. I don't want to take up too much more time, but while we have Andy on the line here still, feel free to type those questions through. Andy, I do want to ask you, we did have a question come through. Someone would like you to repeat the best season for the Okavango Delta. Unfortunately, I don't know that.
That's a tough one because it depends on what your photographers want to see. If you follow the rate chart, you're going to get lost, meaning the high season starts June 1st and for most companies extends to the end of September or October. But that also coincides when the Northern Hemisphere wants to take their holidays. So that doesn't mean it's the best. Personally, I like to take people at the very, very beginning of the end of the dry season, when the rains start to come, when all of your migratory birds come, and it's when your ungulates are having babies. So your zebra, your impala, they're all having babies. And that tends to happen in the months of November, December. So that's when I like to be there. And it also coincides with fewer people, better rates. As a general statement, it starts to get a little more challenging as the grasses get taller there. So April and May are probably the only 2 months that I prefer to avoid, if at all possible. But every month is a good month there. Yeah.
I love when you say that just because it's high season and when people are traveling doesn't mean it's the best season. It's so interesting. Of course, you look at the rate chart and you automatically think that, oh, they're charging more, so it must be the better season or the best season. That's totally not true. So wonderful point.
And I'll add to that, the high rates of the year for Botswana, June through September, October. October is the hottest month of the year. We call it suicide month. And why is it the highest rate of the year when it's the hottest? Or why? Remember, this is Southern Africa, so June, July, August are the winter months, which means the skies are often wispy clouds, sometimes hazy, and the grass on the ground is often brown. So to me that's not as compelling photographically as when you've got these big puffy clouds on the horizon when it's a little bit warmer outside and the grasses are greener and more lush, yellow. I like that.
No,
so
great point.
November, December, January. Yeah.
This is a great question. Talk about some of the lenses you recommend bringing. Now, I'm sure, as you are more advanced in your photographic journey, I'm sure you'll be quite partial to, bringing, your favorite lenses. But can you just touch on some lenses?
Well, I'm gonna be very agnostic here and tell you that I advise my customers, because everybody has a different budget. Everybody has a different sensitivity for weight and size of gear. I always tell people, bring the longest lens that you can afford, that you want to spend on, and that you want to carry and hold every time you take a photograph. Okay? And for some people, that means, a point and shoot, which is fine. That's totally cool. But there's an adage that you will always want more focal length. You'll always want more zooming on every trip. You bring 400 millimeters, you want 800. You bought 300, you want 500. It just doesn't matter. But here in North America, especially the U.S., we've got multiple lens rental houses like lensrentals.com. We also have Borrow lenses in California that you can rent from right before you leave, and then you just return it when you get back home. It's all a pre-addressed, pre-labeled box. It's really, really easy. And also, if you contact one of those companies, they can give you a discount code for your customers. It's usually 10 or 15% off, but customers will appreciate everything.
Yeah. You actually helped me one time, just because I am one of those people that does have a point and shoot. I am not an advanced photographer, but I was like, hey, listen, Andy, I'm wanting to explore what I'm capable of. What do you recommend? So that's a really great point from all of you as well. I personally am not financially able to purchase, you know, lens that I would of course love to have, but these
Yeah,
rental agencies are really, really cool. So
they're
that's a
easy.
really great recommendation for your clients. And I'm sure most of them, like I said, are advanced in their photographic journey. They might own them, but if they're wanting to use or practice or kind of experiment with a different lens, I personally
Yeah.
didn't know about that. So that's
Well,
a great recommendation.
let me be a little more specific though. I would say to counsel your customers to bring at least 400 millimeters equivalent. That's where you can fill the frame with a lot of mammals and start to approach uh, uh, adequate sizes for birds in the frame. 400 millimeters.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Andy, I'd like to thank you for your time. We're just hitting the 30-minute mark, so I don't want to take up too much more of anyone's time, but we appreciate everyone joining us. If you did join us late, don't worry. I was recording this webinar, so we will be sending, that recording out to you. But other than that, head over to the Emerging Destinations website, sign up for some of our future webinars. I would really like to thank Andy for joining us today and showing us some of his really great shots. But Andy, thank you for joining us, and everyone else, thank you and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you.